You are listening to the Manifested Sis podcast, a safe space for women of color to explore all things manifesting, wellness, self-care, and personal development. You are always manifesting, and now you can do it intentionally and consciously to create the life of your dreams. Each episode gives you actionable tips and strategies from the spiritual to the practical that will help you get from where you are to exactly where you want to be with grace and ease. Thanks for tuning in. Here's your host, intuitive life coach, Danny Faust.
Hello and welcome to the Manifested Sis podcast. I am your host, Coach Danny Faust. You are awesome for tuning in. I appreciate you listening. Oh boy, today's episode is gonna be some shit, y'all. I was really looking forward to interviewing my friend Raven Delana. She's a yogi. She is a gentle spirit. And she's also a real one. I just can't wait for you to hear her and feel her wonderful energy through this interview. We talk about boundaries, how to get you some, how to regulate on those who are infringing on them, and how to just woman up and set them with love and clarity. And we talk about a lot of stuff, actually. This conversation is a winding road, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Actually, no, not yet. First, I've got to read you this fantastic bio. Ready? Here we go. Raven Delana is the founder, strategist, and coach at the Way Thru. And that through is THRU. She works to support your creative vision as a mirror to help you see your blind spots, a magnifying glass to bring your vision into focus, and a spotlight on your shadows so that you can do the work required to uplevel your creative venture and contribute to your community in meaningful ways. With over 15 years of experience developing marketing and operational strategies for solo business owners, Raven is on a mission to help other perfectly imperfect visionaries work through the barriers and get their work into the world using mindful practices such as self-care, meditation, and yoga. She's dope, and I love her, and you will too. Before we get into this, I just want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by me. If you want personalized one-on-one manifesting coaching, reach out to me. My coaching is a blend of magic, mindset, manifesting, motivation, lots of M words to help you create a life and business you love with ease. You can visit bit.ly/manifestwithdanny. That's a bit.ly/manifestwithdanny to learn more. And don't forget, y'all, your girl is psychic. And I do lots of metaphysical energy clearing and all that good stuff. So if you want to know what spirit has in store for you, or you want to find out if this dude that you're messing with is the one, girl, holla at me. I got your back. You can always DM me at the Danny Faust on Instagram or visit okdanny.com and click on work with me. And now we're going to jump in with Raven Delana and just get ready to have your mind blown and fall in love with Raven. Here we go.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are here with Raven Delana. She is a transformational coach, and you are going to absolutely love her. She is going to give you your life, hand it to you with a bow on it. Hi, Raven.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you. I know that every listener is going to come away with just some really important gems that are going to help transform the direction of their lives. I can feel it. Trust me, I'm psychic. All right, so we're going to start.
Right, I do trust you.
We're going to start with some speed dating questions, and you don't have to answer them super fast. I just like the speed dating term. Okay, so first one, what or who inspires you?
My little sister.
Why?
Because since she's been little, one of the things that sticks out to me is that she never code switched. And it's not just in her language, but that's how she shows up in life. Like, she is who she is, no matter where she goes, no matter who's around. And she's so full of charisma and just life. Just being her pure, authentic self. So she inspires me to do that for myself.
I like that. She's like, you're going to get me, period, T. Yes.
T, yes.
Yes. Okay. I like that. This might be hard. What's your favorite book?
Ooh. Favorite book is, I won't tell you my favorite. I'll tell you the one that I'm reading next.
I do not appreciate this.
This is like, who is your favorite child?
Whichever one's not annoying me.
Good answer.
All right, give me what you're reading next.
I read a lot, and then I sort of I read things and I let them go. So I can't tell you my favorite, but I can tell you that the next thing that I'm reading is Love and Rage by Lama Rod Owens, who is a Buddhist teacher and very counterculture, I think. Black, queer, Buddhist teacher. And I love everything he says. And so I absolutely want to hear what a Buddhist has to say about rage, because I know he's going to keep it real.
I like that. That sounds very cool. I'm putting that in the show notes, everybody, so don't have to write it down. Yeah, I want to read it now too. Adding to my very long list. Mm-hmm. And what is the best advice you've ever received?
This one's easy. Near my 30th birthday, I was working in a corporate environment, and there's this woman who I admired, Black woman. She was just about to turn 40 and was very accomplished in her career. And I remember I looked at her because both of our birthdays were coming up, and I said to her, I can't wait to be 40. 40 sounds so cool. It sounds amazing. That's that age where you get to not care what anybody thinks and just do whatever you want. And you're fully adult. And I had all these grand ideas about what 40 was. And she was like, why not start now? And it blew my mind open.
Mind blown. Oh my gosh.
And so I did.
What changes did you make right after that? After she exploded your whole mind and you put your mind back together, what did you do? What changes did you make?
I very quickly left that job.
Yes.
Because pretty much every aspect of my life surrounded that job and was completely unhealthy for me and for everybody around me. And so I left and started coaching. Probably 6 months after she said that to me, I was in a whole different state on a whole different trajectory.
That's awesome. It's so incredible how one little thing can flip a switch and just change your whole life's direction.
Yeah, immediately. The moment she didn't have to explain a thing. The moment she said it, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right.
I wonder if she knew how profound it would be for you when she just made that, it's one simple comment. And now here you are.
I have since let her know that. And I don't think she did. I think she was just having a casual conversation.
Yeah.
She had no idea she was changing my life.
Oh, I love that even more.
Yeah. Because that means that we all have that power, right? We're all having these conversations with people and saying things that make sense to us. And so we just say it, and we could be making someone's life 100 times better or worse, which is
that too. But let's focus on the other one for now, because I think that's probably way more common than you think.
Yeah.
I know you're definitely doing that in your coaching. I wonder if when you're giving your little tidbits, people are sitting on the other side of the phone, mind blown, and you're just, going through bullet points or something.
I think it happens a lot because a part of what happens in coaching is that when I go into a session, just like when I came into the session, I smudge and I meditate and I do what I can to empty myself of whatever has happened in my day and, whatever is going on up here. And so I'm not really thinking about the things that I'm saying. to people. Like I'm completely in flow. And so it never really feels to me like, oh my God, I'm about to say something profound, so you better buckle up. I'm just having the conversation.
Yeah.
And I hope, and many people have said that in those conversations, there is a lot that feels transformative for them.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm just I'm responding to whatever it's almost like improv. I'm just responding to whatever they put out.
You're yes-anding them.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, now that you said all that, I don't want to ask my last question, but I'm going to anyway because it's very important. And the answer will be profound.
Okay.
Grits, salt or sugar?
Both.
Oh my God, me too. Are you serious?
I'm so serious because here's the thing. As a single person, and I've talked about this with my other single friends, it is very hard to make one serving of grits. Actually, 1.5. One serving is easy, but nobody wants one serving of grits. And so it's hard to make 1.5. You make 2, 1 with salt, 1 with sugar.
Okay, I thought you meant together. Okay.
Oh.
I'm no longer mind blown. I put salt and condensed milk. Put it together. It's like salty. It's sweet. It's so good. Please try it one day.
I'm going to try that. I do condensed milk with my coffee. So that sounds delicious, actually.
It's going to be perfect. Okay. I want a full report when you try it. But I am team both, even separate. So I like your style.
Yes.
Okay, so I announced in the intro that we were going to be discussing boundaries and their importance and what they are and all that good stuff for everyone today, to give them really a primer on it and why it can be part of the transformation of their life and improving their life. So before we hop into the boundaries discussion more pointedly, I want to know how you came to be doing this transformative work and helping people with their boundaries.
Yeah. It all started with a TV show when I was in college. Yeah. And most people don't remember this show. It was one of the first reality shows ever.
What?
It's called Starting Over. And it was a house with 2 coaches. You remember that?
Yes, I remember it. Yes,
it was the first time I'd ever seen a coach, and I was 18. Up until then, I thought that I had wanted to be a teacher since I was in 2nd grade. Then I got to college and realized, no, at least not a school teacher.
Yeah.
Not a public school teacher. It takes a very special type of person to do that. And I realized that was not me. And so I was pursuing psychology and saw this TV show where they were helping people to make changes in their life, like in the moment. And immediately I was like, that's it. I want to be a coach. I was 18, which is different from being 18 now, because I think that an 18-year-old these days would just like put a website up and start.
Child.
And I love y'all for that. I really do. But in that moment, me at 18, I was like, okay, that's something I'll do when I'm older. So went through the whole path of being in school, ended up dropping out of school, went directly into the workforce, ended up in corporate America, working jobs that were sucking the life out of me, to the point where my very last job, the whole like sitting in the parking lot for a half an hour before I get out of the car because I just don't want to be there. And in that moment, I was describing it to people as I felt like I was a cardboard cutout of myself.
Jesus.
And that's what was sitting at my desk, because there was no part of me that was actually showing up in that space. And then I got laid off.
Yay!
It was the best thing that's ever happened, honestly. And I sort of kind of, arranged to be laid off. And that was when I was 30. And that was the first time that I had that much time off from a job since I was 14.
Freedom.
It was amazing to be free, to be able to like have this space to actually consider like, what do I actually want to do with my life? And so that's when I got certified as a life coach, started my business, and I had already sort of had an awareness of yoga and meditation. I had a really wonderful boss at one of my jobs who was into yoga and would just kind of like slide me a book every now and then, because I was very Baptist. I was like trying to do the like traditional Christian thing, which I hadn't grown up with. So it was new to me. And I was like, I was like, out of nowhere, I'm going to be Baptist. It's going to be great.
Who does that? I'm sorry. Who does that? I want us to go a little further into this. Why did you just pick up Baptist life?
So I had grown up in church, but not a Baptist church.
Okay, gotcha.
And so for me, Baptist was like a step down, like more ground. Oh. Yeah, we could do a whole episode just on my whole.
Wow. Well, I'm a heathen. I don't know anything about this stuff, so I didn't know there were layers and levels. So
yeah, like I grew up in a Pentecostal church, which is like lots of stringent rules. Grew up wearing dresses and hats, and there were rules around how long the dresses had to be. Yeah.
Okay. Very strict and devout. Okay.
Exactly. And so Baptist was like just normal church for me. Wow. So I was like, let me try this like normal church
Relaxed
thing.
Church.
Right. But I was like, I went hard with it. I was like going to Bible study, like all these things. And so this one boss was like around me during that period and would just like slide me materials about yoga and meditation and like just like drop little seeds here and there. And so it wasn't until 5 years later, as I was leaving this other job, that all of those things came together. And I ended up going to a yoga retreat and really kind of coming to a deeper understanding of my spirituality outside of church. And that path led me into some very interesting situations, one of which was spending 2 years living at an ashram.
What's an ashram for people who don't know?
For people who don't know, an ashram is a spiritual community based in the practice of yoga from a pretty traditional standpoint. So like not the yoga that you might do in a gym, but actually getting to the root of the culture and the roots of yoga from a spiritual and sort of religious perspective. And, you know, it's a place where people live together in community, eat together, meditate together, everything together. And prior to that point, like I barely had ever even had a roommate.
Oh my gosh. How was that transition? Sorry to hop in again, but a girl.
Yeah. It was hard.
Did you have to set boundaries?
So that experience, because I went into it knowing all of the great things about this community. I had visited a couple times and met some people. And so I went into it like, oh, this is like the land is beautiful. When you go there, the land speaks to you, right? It does something to you. And I had that experience. And so I was going there to go deeper into that experience and then to just be around people who were seeking and on their own spiritual journeys. And that just sounded like a lovely place to be because I didn't know what a spiritual journey looked like. I didn't know that it's a hot mess. And so it was a culture shock, both going into it and coming out of it. because first of all, because there's so many aspects of the place that are built around Hinduism. And it's also kind of like set off, it's in Virginia, but like set off in the country. So I could be there for weeks and never leave the grounds. And so in many different ways, it was a huge culture shock to go from living in DC in the middle of the city.
Oh my God.
To being in the most quiet. I could hear bugs outside of my house.
Oh my goodness.
That's how quiet it was. Like when I walked to my house, pitch dark, you could see every star in the sky. People would say they could see the Milky Way. I don't know anything about stars, but when I see like a cloud of stars, like that is the sky that you get to see out there. And so, it was removed from so many things. And there are certain things that because you're there, you do or don't do. So like everyone eats together in a cafeteria. And you don't realize how much time cooking meals every day takes until you don't have to do it. And then that becomes more time for going to meditate at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then again at 12. And then again at 6 p.m. 3 times a day. Taking classes on yoga and all the different aspects. So pranayama, breathing practices, jnana yoga, the actual like study of the mind. And so you're completely immersed in it. You're completely immersed. There are monks who live there. There are people who have lived there for 20, 30, 40 years. And then there are other, like younger people who have been there for 5 years or who are going through for 6 months or whatever. And so it's this like vastly diverse community, huge culture shock. And what happened is that in that space, and I wonder if people can understand this a little bit better with what's happening with COVID, because I've been hearing people say time moves differently now. Like time feels different. Mm-hmm. And that was very much present on the ashram because there were so many different, there's so much stimulus that we get in the world that wasn't there. So a week could feel like a month. A day could feel like a half a day. It wasn't that things move slowly or things move quickly. Time was just wavy.
Yeah. And also you were meditating multiple times a day. So you were going into timelessness a few times a day and coming back oh, where am I? Who am I? Wow.
Yeah.
Time was we were what is time? Right? Oh my God. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And then another aspect of it, and this is where it gets into the boundary piece, is that if you imagine, so I'm living and working at this place. Imagine you have beef with somebody on your job. But you only have to go to that job from 9 to 5. And then you leave and you go home. And you talk to your husband and you love your husband, and that's a wonderful place to be. And you get refreshed and renewed, and then you go back to the place and you have that beef. And maybe you resolve it after a couple weeks, right? Because you run into that person in the hallway finally, and you deal with it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
Victor, you now see that person at least 3 times a day because you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner with them. You're seeing them on the way to meditation 3 times a day. You might even live next door to them. And so, and not that was all bad, it just meant that processing happened quickly, even if everything else happened slowly. Mm-hmm. So if I've got beef with somebody, I need to clear it up before lunch.
Was it true processing, or was it a smuggling of emotions, or a delaying? Both? Yeah.
Both. It depended on why someone was there, because there were some people who were there to kind of deepen their spiritual path. But there were, like, to be honest, and, you know, we keep it real, there were some people who were there because they didn't have other places to be. Because they couldn't be in, let's call it, normal society. And so an ashram was a place where they could thrive. They could go there and work on the farm for a year and be fed and have community and have friends, and the expectations of them compared to the expectations of someone who is working a corporate job in the city, or even somebody who's working a like hourly job, you know, still has to like wake up, go to work, like pay bills,
clock in, do what you got to do. Yeah.
Things. And so when in a space where the expectations are lower, it becomes a safe place for people who are suffering from mental illness.
People let their crazy out. You don't have to speak all gentle. People were letting their crazy out on this damn ashram and testing you. And you had to either smuggle your feelings or feelings around it, or you had to process quick to get through it. So you have to release
you're faced with that decision every day.
Oh.
Because if it's not one person, it's another. Right? And if it's not one situation, then it's another. And then if you somehow manage to be in complete bliss with everybody, then you're faced with yourself. So
how do you set boundaries in a place like that?
You have to. Well, what I learned is some people didn't. But what I learned, because I was there with a certain amount of groundedness that was not usual for people there. Like I had come in for a certain thing for myself, like to enrich myself spiritually, but I wasn't deeply immersed in yoga philosophy. Like the teacher wasn't my guru. And so one of the sayings is that like there is a good amount of people there who are kind of like floating a foot off the ground. That's the best way that I can describe it. Like,
I didn't hear that. Floating a foot off the ground?
Floating a foot off the ground.
Okay. And then there's other people who have their shit together.
Right.
Okay.
And not even that those people didn't have their shit together, but like they just
more
whatever
airy-fairy than others.
Yeah. They like, if you picture like the most airy-fairy person that you know of here, like in normal space, that person can go to this place and actually float.
Okay.
Like that's the best way that I can say it. Like they look like they're floating and they interact as though they're floating. And so like the memes that you see on Instagram or whatever that are like just the pure love and light and like never any, like just completely positive vibes only. Everything is always okay. Like imagine the living embodiment of that.
Those memes scare me.
Right.
I don't know.
So
I feel
now
like
imagine having
that meme is going to crash eventually. And I'm scared for when that happens. I'm sorry, keep going.
And so if a person living that way doesn't crash, what that means is that things crash around them. You see what I mean? Like if you're a person who you're floating a foot off the ground, but you also have a job to be done, but you aren't attached to worldly things. You know, like time doesn't matter. And all that matters is that, you know, we center ourselves in our heart. But it's like, also you have 300 people coming here next week and they need to eat and they're going to want some training on something. And so who's doing that? Right. And so that's where I had to, because of the role that I was in, as a more like functional role, you know, like Black women show up and we just look like the person that's going to do everything. And oftentimes we do most of everything. And so I had to for whatever boundaries I had set before that, this was the true test of who I wanted to be, how I wanted to interact with people, and what I was willing to do. And really having to stand in that, almost as though I was on stage pretty much every moment unless I was in my house.
So you went from a cardboard cutout to constantly in performance mode. That's wild, B.
Yes.
That's wild.
It was wild. And but like in that performance mode, and this time actively fighting to get out of it. Because I had that other experience. I was like, I'm not going to perform, even if y'all hate me.
Yeah.
And having people tell me that they disliked me or that I was being too aggressive. Oh, girl, all of it. And having to literally sit in mediations. And I'm laughing when I say that because they weren't mediations for real. There was this like internal like community process, whatever. But like having to sit in those meetings and have someone tell me that the reason that they have been like blatantly disrespectful to me for a year is because when I first got there, I didn't come to a party of theirs. Or like, you don't hang out.
What?
And having to say like,
wait, were they 13 or?
No, like grown-ups. Oh, like only grown-ups allowed. Only grown-ups allowed. So I'm having this conversation with a fully grown adult and saying, do you understand that it's okay for me not to be friends with you? What's not okay is your behavior for the past year because of it.
Year.
12 months. 12 whole months.
And you had no exit. You had to deal with this person. Oof, that's...
Right. Because meanwhile, for me, it's a spiritual journey, right? And we hear that spiritual journeys are hard. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to stick it out. I want to get from this experience what it has for me. Don't know what that is, but let me stick around and find out. What it had for me was some bullshit. I know, but
lessons, right? Let's spin this twisted to positive. You got lessons. You got some growth up in there.
Growth for sure. And this is actually one of the things that is said. So in yoga, they use Sanskrit terminology, which we could go into a whole thing about appropriation, because I'm talking about a yoga ashram. And so in case anyone's confused, I am speaking of a place full of white people.
I think they got it.
Okay.
And if they didn't get it early on, when Sis was upset with you for not coming to her party, I think they knew what was up.
Hopefully that would be the clue. Yes. So yeah, I just want to be clear that I am talking about a place full of white people. This is not an ashram in India where people are indigenous to the practice that they're teaching. Sadhana is what I was going to say. So one of the Sanskrit words is sadhana, and that is your practice of meditation and yoga and whatever else it is that you're doing on your spiritual journey. And so what became common is if you had any issue with anything, no matter how blatantly obvious it was that it was wrong or harmful or just gross, the response would be, well, that's your sadhana. That's what you're here for.
Oh my God. I'm going to teach my husband that word, and then I'm going to tell him everything that I do annoying to him is his sadhana. You might have just saved a marriage, girl. I can't wait. Go do the Lord. That's your sadhana.
Yeah. So in that, what I did get out of that experience is this workbook, because I left that experience having stood up for myself and for other people, but specifically for myself in a way that I hadn't ever before, that I hadn't had, like I had never been challenged to that level before. And so what it did was allow me to see all of what was possible in terms of like how to interact with the place and how to interact with the people. And there were, I could go there and just fold myself into what they wanted me to be. And there were very many people who were doing that, and that was okay for them. And I was able to look at that and say, nope, not me. I'm still Raven. Like,
you channeled your little sister.
Yeah. Actually, I had her come up there one day.
Lord.
And it's hilarious. When I tell you this girl, so she is in a sorority. And one of my favorite things is that her, when you're in a sorority, you get a line name. And her line name is, I hope I don't mess it up, Ultra Destruction. Ooh. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, they know her. They have clearly met her because she, like, in the most beautiful way, wrecks everything. Like, whatever you thought you were going to do, it becomes different when she shows up. And just like, she fills a room with her presence. And so imagine this, like, whatever movie you have seen about a yoga ashram or about like hippies on a commune or anything like that, like, fairly accurate, right? So this like quiet, grassy knoll, and everyone's coming from meditation. And so everybody has these like hushed tones. And my little sister shows up and she's like, do you know Raven?
Oh gosh.
I could hear her.
Oh my gosh.
Across the quad. She's just like, she didn't care.
She had a question that needed an answer.
And she got it.
There it is.
And she found somebody who pointed her towards me, and she just showed up and was fully herself. But what that did for me, because I am most myself around her, having her in this space showed me the difference. It showed me where I was performing.
That's really beautiful right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I had to have that because, again, there were people who had been there for a year and not seen their families. Wow. Yeah. And that's just the younger people. There were people who had been there for 30 years and not seen their kids who they left to come move there. So for me, it was important to stay in connection with myself through the people that know me and love me. And so, yeah, so my boundaries were challenged in every which way possible, like from like because I was in this position of power and like everybody wanted something from me, I had to set a boundary around lunchtime. Like, hey, what do you do during lunch? You eat your lunch? What do I do during lunch? I eat my lunch. I don't answer your questions. I don't answer your emails.
So let's go down to the basic nitty gritty. Yeah. When we're saying you set a boundary, what does that look like in day-to-day life? So saying, yes, I'm having my lunch, leave me alone. But in other work situations or with friends and family, what's a boundary?
Yeah. So I want to be clear about this because a lot of people think that a boundary is telling somebody else what to do. So using that example of me there, my boundary was actually not don't come talk to me, but I'm not talking business during lunch. And if you bring up business, I will either stop talking or get up and leave. And so the boundary was completely focused on me, what I needed, and what I was going to do if I didn't get it. And that's, if people don't get anything else, I want to be clear that you cannot change other people's behavior. Their behavior might change because they want to stay in conversation with you or stay in relationship with you or whatever. But you have not changed their behavior. You cannot change their behavior. And if you are focused on changing their behavior, you will wear yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It has to be. So the definition that I give of boundaries is integrity plus self-advocacy. And so integrity plus self-advocacy. For me, integrity is when your values, beliefs, actions all align, right? Which means you have to know what those things are. You have to know what you care about, know what you want to do, know what you want to eat, know who you want to be friends with, all those things, right? That's integrity. Knowing it and then doing it. Self-advocacy is letting other people know what you've decided.
I like this a lot.
And then making sure it happens.
I like that you said that it's an I situation, an I statement. It's about me. That way you have the power. You're in control. And then whatever happens external, it kind of doesn't matter because you've set that line for yourself. That's nice.
And you have to be willing to do that.
Why? Why is it so important?
I want to borrow from Brene Brown. In one of her books, she talks about compassion, right? And Brene Brown is a sociologist. I think people may sometimes forget that. Yeah, she writes books around personal development, but she's a scientist at her core. And so she's actually done research around compassion. And what she found is that the people who had the most compassion had the clearest boundaries.
Why was that?
Because you cannot give and give and give and give and give and continue. Like, that's not sustainable, right? Eventually, you're either going to burn out or become bitter or resentful of the people that you're giving to, right? So boundaries say, I want to give and I want to be compassionate and I want to show love even through action. And here's my limit.
I like that. I thought you were going to say a but you put an and here's my limit.
And here's my limit.
That's extra loving.
Yeah, because the limit allows me to keep loving. Right. I was just listening to an IG Live earlier today, and she used the example that, like, I love having people over. I can entertain people for exactly 3 days. So you can stay for 5 days. It's going to stop being fun at 3 days. That's what I have to give. And so do you want it to be fun or do you want to be here? Because what I can promise you, because I know myself, and this is actually very true for me, I would less than 3 days.
Afternoon.
like, for instance, if I'm going to go to a party, I know that for myself, there's going to come a point when I need to leave. When that point comes, I'm gone. If you need me to stay after that point, I will be cranky. Is that what you want to deal with? If so, sure, I'll stick around. If not, thank you very much, I'll go home. And even that is an example of, like, a boundary doesn't have to be a hard line, right? I'm just telling you, after 10 p.m., here's what you're going to get. Like a like a gremlin.
Don't get it wet.
Here's what's going to happen, right? But there might be other situations where I say, for my own self-care, I have to leave, period.
So boundaries can be flexible.
It can be flexible because you don't want to create so many boundaries that you can't be social or in relationship with people. Like, the integrity piece is figuring out what you want, right? So if what you want is to hang out with your friends and be social, then you don't create a boundary that gets in the way of that. You create a boundary that helps you to do that in a way that's sustainable.
So how do you know when it's time to set a boundary around something? Is it when you feel yourself getting to the point of resentment? How do you do it before? Like, how do you know where in your life to set these boundaries?
Resentment is the easiest red flag. You know, if you're giving something and you want it back, you know, whether that's your time, your money, your effort, if you're sitting around waiting for people to say thanks. And that's not to say that people shouldn't be grateful, but if the thanks is the reason why you're doing it, then you probably don't really want to be doing it. Right? So that could be a place. You can look at where you consistently have conflict, whether it's in one relationship or across several relationships. So if you find that you and your husband are constantly arguing about the trash, right? That might be a place to look. But also if you find that with all of your friends, you are constantly disagreeing about where to go eat, then that may be a place to look, or like which parties to go to. I don't know what people do in social life.
What social life?
Like, what people with friends do. But I do want to call attention to the fact that like there are different categories of boundaries.
I want to know them.
Yeah. So like they could, and boundaries don't have to be about like huge life-changing things, right? One of my boundaries when I was at the ashram was that there was an expectation that everyone there be vegetarian, right? I was not vegetarian. And so I set the boundary for myself that I would eat the free food that they gave me, which was vegetarian. Great. But when I left and was somewhere else, because I am not a vegetarian, I can eat whatever I want, right? And no one can tell me what style of eating I must have, right? It's my body. And so in a similar way, like you might have friends who are vegan and they have opinions on whether you eat meat. It's okay to like, regardless of what your politics are, regardless of what facts we know about how the meat industry affects the earth and all of those things can be true and valid, you still get to decide what you put in your body. Right? And
so how do you how would one handle the response, an unhappy or unfavorable response when you have set a boundary, even if the boundary doesn't have anything to do with them, because it's what you're eating versus what they want you to eat?
Yeah, I think that's super common. It's probably more common that somebody has an issue with a boundary that seemingly has nothing to do with them. It's either that or, this is a good point, it's either that the boundary has nothing to do with them or they benefit from you not having the boundary. Right? So you have to interrogate which one of those it is. If they benefit from you not having the boundary, great reason to keep it. And you don't even have to tell them that that's why. Right? So in the workbook, I talk about communicating boundaries can be vocal or non-vocal, right? Everything doesn't have to be said out loud. Sometimes your boundary means that you walk away. And so that's what I would say for people who are challenging a boundary that doesn't have anything to do with them. You have to own that it's none of their business. You're an adult and you don't have to entertain it. Like, and so whatever fits into your personality, if you're a funny person, you can laugh it off. If you're a serious person, you can say, no, thank you, and let's not have this conversation again. Or anything in between. Or if you're like me, you can literally just turn around and walk away from conversations.
Now, what about the woman who is soft-spoken, mild-mannered, does for everyone, works herself to the bone? You know her. It's what we're conditioned to be, right? Do for others. she has been literally a doormat for years, but she's hearing this conversation now and she's like, oh man, I want that strength. I want to be like Raven and be able to say what I want and, you know, set my parameters. What do you say to her for how she gets started making these changes and transformations in her life?
Start on the inside. It will be very tempting to listen to this conversation and wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm telling my mama she can't come over here anymore. I'm telling my job I'm not doing this project. Like, nope, right? If that works for you, go for it. But for most people...
Don't go for it, guys. Don't do it.
I mean, I don't know what people's situations are. For most people, you want to start internally, because the most powerful part about boundary setting is holding the boundary. And if you haven't convinced yourself that you deserve it, then you're not going to hold it, and it's just going to look silly because people are going to challenge you and you're going to be like, okay, that's fine this time. It doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. You have to believe it. That's the whole integrity piece. Like, you have to know what your values are, believe that you deserve to have the things that you want, like to live a life that's aligned with your values. And that part could take months, could take a year. And so in the meantime, you can be taking small steps. You can be setting small boundaries with people who love you and who care about you and who you trust to be with you through conflict, right? So like, maybe you don't start at work. Maybe you start with your husband because you have a whole contract that says y'all have to be together.
It's his sadhana.
It's his sadhana. Yes. You know, or maybe you start with your kids, right? Because you're already teaching them how to be, right? And so maybe that's a good place to say, like, no, when mommy goes to the bathroom, that's her private time.
My kids are 6 and 8, and that boundary, I don't know. My daughter's still just bang, 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 banging on the door if I lock it. I don't know.
I know that's a hard one. But like, at least with your kids, you get to like give them the full lesson. Yeah. Whereas with an adult person, like, it feels weird to teach them. Like, I'm laughing because this is a conversation I've actually had with an adult person. It feels weird to explain that we're not having a conversation while I'm using the bathroom.
Oh my.
Right?
You've been through some stuff.
Girl, the book is coming soon. The other book, I should say.
Yes, because we have the workbook. So wait, I have a question. In the workbook, can we work through to see, you know, what our values are and what we really believe in and where we can start to make our boundaries?
Yes. In the workbook, we start off with the foundation of self. So it goes in the order that I suggest. So you start off with the foundation of looking into your own values, finding the places where you need to set boundaries. I suggest that people who are working through the workbook choose a like medium level boundary to start with, like something that they care enough about to finish the workbook, but is not so stressful or traumatic that they might shut down and not complete the work, right? Because the first time that you do this, it's practice, right? So you start with something small. And then it walks through the different categories of boundaries, gives lots of examples of ways to articulate what you're doing. Again, the vocal and non-vocal. So ways that you can show people your boundaries, because you often have to do both, right? Like, you say it and then you show it with your actions. You walk away from conversations that aren't meant for you. Or like a good boundary is around gossip. If your friends gossip and you don't want to be around that, then there are subtle ways, like you can say it first of all, like, oh, I don't really like this conversation. I don't want to participate. But then you can show it by actually not participating, right? So the book goes through a few examples across the different areas of life and across the different categories of boundaries. And it really is an intro to boundaries. People have asked me to do another one that's specific to relationships or kids or work or business. And those may be coming. But this one is just to like open your eyes to the fact that you can have boundaries, you can set boundaries, you can communicate boundaries. And then the most important piece is honoring other people's boundaries.
What? We don't like that part. We're focusing on us. Me. No. Okay, tell us more.
So have you ever bought furniture from IKEA?
Yes.
And so in the box, you get this little like Z-shaped thing that helps you to screw things in, right? And sometimes it's like a Phillips head screwdriver on one end and a flat screwdriver on the other end, right? So one tool that has two different purposes. If somehow you break or bend that tool, it's going to be hard to use both ends. Similarly, if your boundaries are loose, then it's going to be that what you receive, like you're letting people walk all over you, you may also be walking all over other people. Right? And maybe it doesn't show up in the same way. Maybe you allow people to take advantage of you, but then on the flip side, you are an oversharer, right? That's loose boundaries. Or I don't even know if there's a catchy name for it, but like you give advice all the time.
Know-it-all.
A know-it-all, right? Right? You can fix everybody's life but your own, right? Those are loose boundaries. Or you're completely shut down. Those are rigid boundaries, right? So if your tool is bent, not broken, but bent, it's going to be hard to use both sides. And so you have, like, if this conversation is interesting to you at all, if the first part of this conversation has caught your attention, then I really need you to listen up to this part. Check in with how you're honoring other people's boundaries. Are people voicing boundaries to you all the time that you don't hear that way because we're just not accustomed to people asking for what they need?
What would an example be? You and I are having a conversation. I've said something to you you don't like, or I'm going down a path you don't want to talk about, and you are not the most assertive person in the world. How do you show me that you have a boundary around this conversation that I'm trying to have?
So I might say, like, you might ask me a question and I might say, I can't think of an answer. Can we come back to that?
Kind of a parry, defray. I like that.
Right. And I'm not saying that's the best way to handle it, but that's what someone might do if they're not accustomed to voicing their boundaries. They know that they don't want to answer the question, but they also don't want to say no. So can we circle back to it? And then you circle back to it and I say, yeah, I'd rather not answer that question. Someone with loose boundaries might say, girl, I just want to know, like, just tell me a little bit. Just like, you don't have to tell me the whole.
Give a hint.
Right. Give us so like, you see how like that is very conversational, but also this person has shown you and then told you that this is an area they don't want to talk about. Right. And eventually they might give in because you're great at stepping over boundaries. You know? Yeah. And so just like listening more to people and what they say and honoring what someone says the first time. Even when we're playing around, even when it's fun, even when we're in relationship with someone, and maybe someone says like, I mean, do I want to get on a whole consent thing? Consent is a boundary, right? If someone,
even in a marriage, y'all, even in a relationship, y'all,
everywhere between every human and another human. I don't know about pets because I don't have them, but I feel like there's some consent issues there too. So if you meet someone, and I'll talk about friendship because this is my personal challenge, is that lots of people want to be friends with me. And I don't mean that in a cocky way.
Oh, look at this one here. She thinks she's so popular.
I'm not very popular at all. But I do have people who, probably because I'm an empathic person, I'm a very accepting person of
You're
all
lovable.
types, and I appreciate it. What that also means is that people offer me their friendship, even if I don't want it, and will impose their friendship upon me.
What does that look like? They show up to your door with like lunch. Hey girl, let's go do this. What does that look like?
The online version of that.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And the only reason it doesn't happen in person is because nobody know where I live. That's my boundary. If I'm meeting up with someone, I'm meeting you at your house. I'm meeting you out, right? So that I don't have to worry about a new friend showing up because they thought I might want a pie. And it's like, yeah, I want pie, but I want you to leave it on the table outside and get back in your car and go. Like, unless you have told me that you were coming, I'm not into like uninvited guests. And so that's a thing that people do, and it feels good to them. It feels like they're being friendly and open, and maybe they feel like they're solving a problem or just being friendly. And it's like, well, how many times have you heard no? Or variations of no? Just tuning into that and tuning into like what no sounds like. Right?
Yeah. Most people I don't think are going to just be like, no, stop, bye.
Right.
It's going to be a gentle parrying. Yeah.
Yeah. And so honoring those boundaries. And then, I get into a little bit of like just understanding power structures, because the more power you have over a person, the less their no is going to sound like no. Right? Because you have control over them.
That's a good thing for parents to know with their children.
Yes.
With parents thinking they own their kids, like their property or something, like their no means something.
It means something. Absolutely. And especially as a parent, because you're teaching them how to say no, you have to honor the little no's. You have to honor them pushing their plate away from them when they're done eating. That's a no, right? Or the best possible, like, it's not really a good thing, but which I feel should be listened to is when someone walks into a room, how does your child respond? Does their body say no? Do they leave the room and go somewhere else? That's a no.
Yeah.
Right? Paying attention to it. That's it. It doesn't, like, you don't have to make a big deal of it. You don't have to call attention to it, but just paying attention and then helping them to articulate their no, right? When you notice it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, I have this wild belief that as human beings, we are responsible to and for each other in a variety of different ways. And so the same way that a parent might do that with a child, I think there's no reason to not do that with an adult, right? If I'm in a space with an adult, somebody else walks in and I see this person's like face change and body language change. And let's say it's two friends, right? I have a friend that I've invited for dinner. All of a sudden, a different friend shows up and the first friend's face changes. I may not make a big deal out of it, but the next time I'm having dinner, I might ask that person like, hey, I was going to invite so-and-so. What do you think? Right? Because I picked up on the no.
That requires you to be thinking about other people. That requires you to be not so self-absorbed. and worry about your boundaries that you set to now look at other people's.
And so here's the thing about that. And maybe with anything involving like personal development and growth, I think one of the best ways to become self-aware is to pay attention to what annoys you. Right?
I like that.
Because what you don't like in somebody else, it might be something that exists in you.
Mirrors.
Or it might be because, you know, I do a lot of work around trauma with myself and with others. So it might not be that it's something that lives within you, but it might be a wound that exists within you, right?
Talk to us about that.
So, yeah. So when you pick up on these things, when you find yourself being constantly annoyed by the same behavior, right, then challenge yourself to like, just look inside. It's like just do a scan to see where that thing lives in your body, right? Is it me? Is it, you know, childhood stuff? Do they remind me of my parents? What is it? And then what do I do with that information, right? If I get annoyed because people are always late, do I show up on time? Right? Like, let me just check in with that. Like, yeah, most of the time I show up on time. Okay, then what bugs me about people being late? Oh, my mom used to pick me up late from school all the time. Right? And so maybe there's not even like, maybe the thing that you learn from that is that the energy that you have when somebody is showing up late isn't for them. And so you just react differently. Like rather than yelling at people, you just go, oh, right, that's that thing about my mom again.
I love how relaxed and easy breezy you just were about that, because I think a lot of times when people do dig into something that does end up being from childhood, they think they need to dig with like 2 shovels deep down into the dark recesses of their mind and soul to handle it, when it really can just be recognize and release. Yeah. So I'm glad you just said it that easy breezy.
Yeah. And if it feels like more than that, find a therapist.
Yes. I am very glad you said that.
It's your, a therapist is like your Sherpa, right? I wish I knew an English word for that. Your guide through all of that stuff, right? The deep, like a coach can help you, let's say with like the top level, right? And we might even dig 1 or 2 layers deep, but it's always going to be with the eye on moving forward, right? With an eye on what can you do today and what are you going to do tomorrow? A therapist is going to get the drill and go way deep down and do it in a way that you feel safe so that you can see what's there within the container of like having somebody who knows what to do with it. But if you're not in that space, then it's just keep it light. You notice something, okay, just notice it. It's fine.
That noticing. Earlier you said when you were in between the jobs, after you left the cardboard job, you had all this space to consider what you actually wanted. And I wanted to invite people to find a way to make space to consider what they want, what is a wound, like you said, or what's triggering. I know that's really a buzzword now, so I try not to say it, but what's a wound and what needs healing or reconciling and what can just be noticed and released.
This is why I love yoga. And whether it's yoga or just whatever you do to get in your body, right? It could be taking a walk. It could be stretching, yoga, dancing, whatever it is that just helps you to feel your body. Because the more you do that, the more you notice like what your body does, right? So like, when is my jaw clenched? when am I like holding my stomach in? When do my shoulders feel tight?
When am I holding my breath?
Where am I holding my breath? So often, so many people are walking around and not breathing or breathing incorrectly, right? So when you pay attention to that, then what starts to happen is you notice the thing in your body at the same time you notice the thing that created it. So like I'm talking to Danny right now and my shoulders are dropped and I feel completely at ease. And I know that if I stop breathing, right? If I started to hold my breath and if I like all of a sudden crossed my arms, I know you're going to notice it because you're a yogi and you're very much in your body. And I'm going to notice it. And I'm going to check in with myself internally to be like, oh, what were we just talking about when I folded my arms? Something may be uncomfortable, right?
I like that.
Doesn't mean I have to say anything or change anything, just noticing it. And the more you, like, I notice it once, then I'll notice it a second time, then I'll notice it again. And eventually my body on its own may stop doing the thing that creates it. And that's probably the most woo-woo thing I have to say.
Oh, we like woo-woo here. We're all about the woo.
Yeah, like your body, and there's a whole, and this is not, it's actually not woo-woo at all. It's science.
Physiology.
Yeah, like all of these books are starting to come out about like how trauma lives in the body and not just in our bodies, but like how it's passed down through generations. And yeah.
Yeah.
So we are
especially for us, like Jesus. Yeah.
We are living with, I want to say the last thing I read said it's something like 14 generations. That sounds like a lot, but I mean, we're living with a lot. So very many generations of trauma, right? Just like in ourselves. And that's not to be, first of all, it's not a diagnosis because I'm not a clinician, but it's also not, it doesn't have to mean that you're broken. Because there is trauma living in your body, it doesn't mean that you're broken. And if there are wounds, it doesn't mean that those can't be fixed, right? There are people whose entire job is to help you fix those, right? So we're learning about how trauma lives in the body and that like there are forms of therapy where you don't even have to talk. Have you heard of EMDR? I haven't done it myself, but it's
the muscle one.
This one is with the eyes.
Oh,
I'm not even gonna try because I'll mess it up. EMDR, and it's all about eye movement, right? That's a legitimate form of therapy that licensed clinicians are doing today, and it barely requires that you talk. It's all about the physical body.
Yeah.
Right? So our bodies are really, really powerful. And so when I say that like your body can learn to like release your shoulders and release your jaws, it can do that without you having to change anything. And I say that so that people don't feel overwhelmed and like they have to do something. Actually do less. If you feel like you need to do something, the thing that I want you to do is less.
You heard it here first, folks. Don't do shit. Just hang out. Live your life.
Relax.
Yeah.
Because like, first of all, I want to shout out Nat Ministry. Love her work. Rest is revolutionary.
Yes.
Rest is resistance. On a political level as well as a physical level, like take a nap. You deserve it. Yes. Everybody, anyone listening, you deserve a nap right now. Okay. And I don't mean that just like, oh, you're a human being and you deserve a nap. No, I know 100% sure that what you have been doing in your life, because we live under the system of capitalism, you have done enough to warrant a nap, period. Right. Unless you live, I don't know, on the island somewhere and you're just like hanging out in a hammock.
Shit, take a nap. You're on a hammock.
Yeah, you're already there. Take another nap. Yeah. So shout out to the nap ministry. Everybody needs a nap. That rest puts us in the position to have the clear mind, to make better decisions, to act from a place of integrity, and rather than from a place of like our wounds, right? To actively decide who we surround ourselves with rather than taking whatever we can get, right? Having that clarity of mind, you can own, and this is the power of meditation. Yeah. Meditation gives you some of the same things that you would get from a nap in a shorter period of time, right? It gives your mind a rest. And it's like meditation is we call things practices, right? We say like the practice of yoga, the practice of meditation. But meditation is actually practice. Like people who say they can't meditate because their mind wanders, you're doing it right.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much for saying that. Everyone, I want you to hear that with both ears, okay? Because I know that some folks make meditation out to be this scary thing. You have to do it one way to be doing it right. No, your brain's supposed to be working, and now you're kind of getting a little more advocacy over it or control over it in a way.
Yeah. Like,
tell us more.
If you are a person who can sit down and meditate and your mind is completely clear and it just stays that way for an hour, please call me.
And tell me what your prescription is, because I want some too.
Right. Like that's and like when you really study yoga, you see that like what people, like there are these stages of meditation, and what people think is meditation is actually the last step. What people think is meditation not working is the first step.
I'm so glad you're saying it this way.
Your mind wanders, you bring it back. Your mind wanders again, you bring it back. Your mind wanders again, you bring it back. You are practicing bringing your mind back to a place of center and peace, so that when you go to work tomorrow and your boss gets on your nerves and your mind, especially if you're a person who has experienced trauma, your brain just does not work the same way. And so you flip your lid. And I mean that, y'all can't see me, but I'm using the like hand model, which basically is about like your nervous system. Like your nervous system is disrupted. It's that fight or flight, fight, flight, or freeze. So you flip your lid, you go into one of those options. If you have been practicing bringing your mind back, in that moment, you go, oh, fight, flight, freeze, or bring my mind back to center.
I love this. I just realized how long we've been talking.
Ever.
And I could go on.
Do you have anything to talk about?
Impossible. She's cracking up over there, y'all. You can't see her, but okay, so we're going to wrap up.
Okay.
I want you to give us one more good gem about the workbook that everyone is going to have to go and buy, and one last word to sum up everything. What's the one thing you want to leave everyone with?
What I want you to know about boundaries, my last note, to encourage people who, if you have listened to this and it seems hard, first of all, it is. I don't want to sugarcoat. Boundary work is hard. It's worth it. 100%. It will change your life, right? But I want to say that boundary work is not a personality type. It's a skill set. So I hear people saying like, oh, you're a very boundaried person. You have great boundaries. My boundaries are broken, or I don't have any boundaries. First of all, yes, you do. If you've been listening to me, you might notice that I've referred to loose boundaries or rigid boundaries. You can have balanced boundaries, but there is no such thing as having no boundaries. You have them. And just understand that like this isn't a personality type, it's a skill set, which means you can learn it. It may be hard to do. It's not hard to understand. It's not rocket science. And so the skill that's required is to keep trying.
I like that. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just have to be persistent.
Yeah. Yeah. And believe that you deserve it.
That's a whole episode.
Yep.
So in your workbook, we can find out how to do this. It walks us through it from beginning to end, figuring out who we are, where we stand, and then taking us through the process. And then when we're done with the workbook, we have a whole new life. Yes?
You have a whole new boundary.
All right.
Just one. And remember, it's going to be a small to medium-sized one.
Okay.
So you can run through the book over and over and over again. Eventually, I'll be offering an online program for people who can't get through the book on their own, because some people just learn in different ways and appreciate feedback. So I'll be running a program that just helps people to process what's in the book with some support. But yeah, you can run through it as many times as you need until it feels like you've got it. It's like training wheels.
And you offer support one-on-one in other ways, right? Not just for those who want help with facilitating the book. You do coaching for women as well. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes. Right now, I'm offering free coaching for Black women. And
Run, don't walk.
Hey, there are 5 spaces left. I don't know when this is going to air. I am saying it though, because even if this airs after all of the slots have been taken, I know that this is something that I'm passionate about. I got funding to help 10 people this month.
Hooray!
Very much excited because I was going to do it for free anyway. So I was very happy to have somebody support it. And as long as the funding continues, the work will continue. So I'll continue to seek funding. Because a part of the work that I do outside of boundaries, or I shouldn't even say outside, boundary work is a piece of what I do to help people close the gaps that trauma leaves behind. And we've talked about how that trauma lives in our bodies and it may not even be something that we've experienced in our lifetime. I firmly believe that people should not have to buy their way out of oppression. And the thing that I am helping people with has been left with them through these oppressive systems. And that is the reason that I'm very passionate about working with Black women for free, so that they can unlearn what they've been taught by white supremacy, capitalism, and all of these crooked systems.
I got goosies.
Me too. That's the first time that I've said that out loud.
I love you. I'm so excited about what you're doing. You're going to help so many people and their kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. Yes. You're having a lasting impact. You're leaving a legacy in families that aren't even yours. And I'm excited about it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm so excited you got funding for it too. Congratulations. So y'all, this is Raven Delana. Look, she gave you your life. I told you, she gave you your life. Now you're going to have to get this workbook, make your one medium-sized boundary, and then transform your whole life afterwards. But Yeah. So where can we find you? Online, The Way Thru?
The Way Thru, it's THRU. The Way Thru, that's my website, thewaythru.com. That's my Instagram, at The Way Thru. Those are the places where you can find me. I love to be in conversation and connection with people. So I would love for you to follow me as long as you're going to actually connect and be in conversation with me.
Oh, she doesn't want follows for the numbers, y'all. She wants to
Nah.
know who's following. I like this.
No, I'm such an introvert that it's like bugging me that I have like, I don't know, something like 30 new followers over the past week. I'm like, oh my God, who are these people?
They better reach out and get to know you quick.
Yeah. I'm in their inboxes. I'm the person. I'm that person who's like, oh, you just followed me. Hi, I like your pictures. Oh, your kid is cute. I love your puppy.
Well, you're a good engager.
Yeah. Because like, what are we there for?
I go to their page and I'm like, heart, and I'm out.
I mean, I won't be able to do that forever, but for as long as I can, like I actually want to know the people who are like consuming my words.
Yeah. Oh, that makes it way more community.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for being here. Everyone listening, I know you got your life and a half. Follow, but first email her, get in her inbox, let her know you're following, say nice things to her, follow Raven at The Way Thru. And I will see you guys here next week with a solo episode on manifesting. Thank you again so much for listening. I'll see you in a bit. Bye.